our previous meeting. We also post all of our previous meetings recordings to our LCAP website. I did put that in the chat, so please check the chat and you can pull up our the slides for tonight's presentation as well as recordings of our previous LCAP meetings and those slides as well. So we've had two meetings. Our first meeting was a budget update. Our second meeting was a pretty comprehensive look at all of our goals and actions and metrics. And so this meeting today is to look at some specific programs. We did have additional meetings on the calendar if needed. We anticipate we won't need those meetings after tonight's meeting, but we'll see. We can schedule as needed after this evening. We are in a process to prepare a plan that take to their school board in June for adoption, and we're in year 2 of our 3-year plan before we make any significant changes. So I will get us started with tonight's topic, and that's to first share. Let me make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. I believe so. Can everybody see the presentation? Yeah, at home. Yeah. So one of the things that you'll see at tomorrow night's board meeting is we will be doing a mid-year LCAP report to our school board. And in that report, you'll see that we've identified some metrics within our LCAP that are aligned specifically to our instructional goals for 25-26. So just to avoid confusion, we have our board goals, which are the same as our LCAP goals 1, 2, 3, and 4. First goal being preparing students for college and career readiness. Second being supporting all aspects of the child in school. Third being our high quality staff. And then fourth being our facilities. So within goal 1 of our board goals and LCAP goals, we have our instructional goals. And these were presented by Dr. Macias in the fall. And so we want to highlight that we're committed to 3rd grade literacy, the middle school math progression, and college and career readiness. You'll see that there's something at each, our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools. And these are specific checkpoints or focuses for us as a district to ensure students are being successful. These are research-based instructional goals that help us make sure that students are prepared for the next grade level and their career within Burbank Unified. So what we've done is we've identified existing metrics within our LCAP that are our mechanism to measure, are we making progress in these instructional goals? So when it comes to 3rd grade literacy, we're looking at our performance on CASP assessments, and specifically in 3rd grade. We will also have submetrics for different demographics. So 2 of the demographics we look at specifically are our English learners, as well as our socially economically disadvantaged. So you can see here that I've pulled specific information for 3rd grade. So I've teased out that grade specifically and how we're doing in meeting those goals. So our year 2 outcome for 3rd grade from our baseline is down about 5% as a district. This is not a surprise to us, as a lot of these students that are now in 3rd, 4th grade were students that started their educational career in distance learning. So there's still some gaps to fill because of that their first start in that environment. We look at English learners making proficiency. So that's another key metric for literacy. And then a subgroup that's closely monitored is our socially economically disadvantaged students and looking at their progress. And it's a similar decline from our baseline in that group. So things we're aware of and area of focus for us to continue to make sure we're making progress in 3rd grade. Another instructional goal for us as a district is our middle school math progression. And so here you see our metrics within the LCAP of our percent of students proficient on the CASP assessment overall. But then again, I've teased out our middle school grades specifically in this metric. So we're looking at grades 6, 7, and 8 from our baseline to our current year 2 outcomes. And you can see there's growth in all of these grade levels. This last year specifically in middle school math, we saw an increase in proficiency. And so we've put a lot of effort in collaboration with our ed partners and Algebra Project, if you're familiar with any of that work, and scaling that down to middle school, and we're seeing benefits of that. Social economically disadvantaged students are also improving from our baseline in middle school math. So progressing nicely in our instructional goals. We will also have district data for both the elementary metric and our secondary metric. We just won't have that data to report until the year is concluded. Our third instructional goal is our college and career readiness, our A through G completion rates at high school. So this is our high school goal, and these are the metrics within our LCAP that we're using to measure progress with this instructional goal. Of course, graduation rate is tied to that college and career readiness, our DNF rate among students at secondary, our percentage of A through G our students meeting that requirement at graduation, and then our percent of students meeting the college and career indicator. So we are making progress in all of those areas since our baseline, and this encompasses all of our graduates, our graduating students. So key metrics there for measuring that instructional goal. That was sort of a highlight that I wanted to make sure that we share with our this group specifically, as it will be going to the board next week. And just to sort of identify how our systems are aligning and how our goals are helping each other, supporting each other in all areas. So what I'm going to do next is invite Dan DeMundo to join me. And we're going to talk a little bit about Monterey, as Monterey is a program that is funded through our LCAP. Hello, Dan.
Hi.
I'm going to sort of jump and talk about the next couple slides, jump in and look at these things, but I want Mr. DeMundo to jump in and share any information or additional context he can provide with any of this. So Monterey is included in our LCAP plan, and we contribute approximately $560,000 to the teacher staffing at Monterey, our continuation school. I want to recognize that there's been an adjustment made in this action item. In our previous LCAP slides, it was identified as 5 FTE. There are 5 staff teachers at ILA that are paid through LCAP, but not full FTE. One's just extra hourly. So when it comes to salary and benefits, it's 4 FTE that are funded through LCAP. There are a total of 6 teachers at Monterey, the 7th being part of the SOAR program. And so you'll see the next item there, SOAR program staffing includes 1 teacher, a paraeducator, and 2 specialists. The 2 specialists are our wellness and behavior specialists. They work out of Monterey, but their intended purpose really is to go out to school sites, all of our secondary sites, and work with populations that may be transitioning to SOAR or just transitioned from SOAR back to their traditional campus. And just for clarity on what SOAR program is, SOAR program was the program created in lieu of our community day school, which community day school traditionally served students that were having discipline issues, behavioral issues, or attendance issues within our district. It was an alternative to expulsion from the school district. That SOAR program services primarily all of the same populations withstanding, we now have the option for students to be fully expelled from the district since we don't have a standalone community day school any longer. So it's important to note that Monterey campus and the administrative staff and team has absorbed that entire school into their campus and program. And I want Dan to share any context that he may have about both of those, staffing and the SOAR program.
Right. Well, the SOAR program is it's sometimes described as a separate program, but it's a separate program within Monterey High School. So we have one teacher in charge of the students who are enrolled in the SOAR program. But if you were to just step on our campus, you wouldn't really be able to identify who was in the SOAR program and who wasn't, because part of it is to get those students to reintegrate. The goal is to get those students to reintegrate back into our regular school population. So they receive additional supports, which is why we have our mental health and wellness specialists. We have one dedicated teacher and the paraeducator to deal with one classroom of students, to work with them, to put them on special programs where they receive different privileges on campus based on their choices that they're making. They're on a level system. Very intensive support every day to make sure that they are given the tools to get back into a more general ed setting.
Thank you. And I just see that one of our translators asked us to slow down, so we will slow our cadence for our translators. Next slide is the enrollment from the last 3 years at our community day school. So full context with the data that's provided here is that Monterey has a variance in enrollment at any given time in the year. This snapshot is on CBEDS, which is October 5th, which is sort of our state's identified date for a snapshot of enrollment. Monterey population varies significantly at the end of 10 weeks, semesters, et cetera, et cetera. So at any given time, there may be 120 students, there may be 90 students. But this kind of gives you an idea of the population there, with a significant Hispanic Latino population as far as our numbers and where we are in October. And Mr. DeMundo, I'm sure you can add some context to this.
Well, the reason for the fluctuation in numbers is because Monterey is a continuation high school. We also work with credit recovery. Instead of 2 semesters, our school year is broken up into 4 quarters. In each semester in a traditional high school, you can earn 30 credits. In each of our 4 quarters, you can earn 30 credits because our classes are recovery classes. Students have often taken the classes before, they're just taking them again to get a passing grade, or they're taking them to recover credits that they hadn't taken yet at their traditional high school. They can earn 120 credits a year with that model at our school, which means we have students graduating each quarter, which is a fantastic part of our program, but it also leads to fluctuation. So our last quarter, which ended in December, we lost 12 students because they graduated with high school diplomas. But when we came back in January, we had 14 new students coming in from different schools in the district.
One of the things that's been discussed lately, and since we're on this slide, is what does it take to transition into Monterey if people are interested?
Any number of reasons. The primary one is once you get to a point in your high school path, whether life has intervened, whether bad choices have been made with your academic decisions, you won't be able to mathematically graduate at a traditional high school setting. There's not enough time left for you to take the classes that you need to satisfy all the graduation requirements. That's the primary reason students come to Monterey High School. We also are just a smaller setting. We have a lot of supports that traditional high schools don't. Our class sizes are much smaller. The teachers are able to spend a lot more time with each student as a result. We have a dedicated high school counselor for 100 students because the students that come to us often have very difficult puzzles to fit together as far as high school graduation requirements. So our counselor spends a lot of time with each student that they wouldn't normally get at a traditional high school. As a result, we also can have students that have other issues. If they aren't comfortable in the traditional high school setting because of the numbers of people, because of other incidents that have happened at a traditional high school, they just need fewer distractions. We are also able to have those students attend Monterey High School. Typically, it's juniors and seniors, but we also are able to have sophomores join our school. It's difficult to have an incoming freshman because we have such a limited staff. We aren't able to offer freshman courses that they would typically take at a traditional setting. So it's not until they see some difficulty in their traditional setting that they get recommended to come to Monterey. And I hope I'm speaking slowly enough. I sense that I'm not.
So a couple of key metrics as far as the school, the continuation school, is looking at our graduation rate and our graduation of socially economically disadvantaged students, as there's a disproportionate number of socially economic students at Monterey continuation school compared to our comprehensive sites. So it's traditionally been about at least 50% of students are low social economic status, which district-wide we're more like 33%. The suspension rate is another key metric for Monterey School. So our baseline was in 22-23, and you can see the jump of about 10% in the graduation rate for both, and then a 12% jump for our socially economically disadvantaged students. And by the way, 98%, 97% is phenomenal for a continuation school. So kudos to all the staff and team there. Suspension rate has increased last year compared to our baseline in 22-23. But if my memory serves me correctly, 22-23 was prior to the SOAR program addition to Monterey. So we can anticipate there may be some more, that suspension rate could increase with that new program on that campus. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dan in full for him to really highlight the outstanding characteristics and qualities of Monterey.
I'm new to the position, so I'm new to Burbank Unified. I came from Glendale Unified, where I worked for nearly 20 years. So it's exciting to be a part of Burbank, exciting to be a part of Monterey High School and the alternative ed programs. I've become very passionate about finding alternative pathways for students that aren't succeeding at a traditional high school setting. Walking into Monterey, I inherited a program that was already very successful. And it was really fun this year because we just went through our WASC accreditation. WASC is where a committee comes in from the state of peers. They evaluate our school. They spent 3 days looking at data, interviewing families, interviewing students, observing teachers, interviewing district administration. It's a pretty rigorous examination, pretty rigorous assessment that all high schools go through. And we just found out that we received the highest possible rating as a continuation high school. That means we do not have to go through that process again for 6 years. So we have a 6-year accreditation. And that's not something that is given lightly. It means the teachers are doing their jobs well and doing it with passion and doing it to meet student needs above all else. And that's what makes a school like Monterey High School so unique. The students that we get coming to our school are not typical students by any stretch. Every student that walks through our doors typically has a much higher sense of need than a typical student does. So to be a teacher at Monterey is really a choice when you work at a continuation high school, because you know you're not going to be able to teach in a typical way whatsoever. You might have a math class with 12 students at 12 wildly different levels of math. We have several students who have attempted Algebra 1 in our algebra class. They've attempted that class 4 or 5 times. Math is a real burden to them. But for the math teacher to find ways to connect with those students and get them passionate about math is why we received that WASC accreditation. Another area that we're able to make students become more engaged at our school is because we are not A through G accredited. which means you can't get our high school diploma, which is just like any other high school diploma in California. You can't go straight to a four-year university, a CSU or a UC university in California. You would have to go to 2 years of community college, but that allows us to be more creative with our electives. So we have electives that are tailored to the teacher's interests and student interests. We have a forensics class taking place right now. We have a class on 80s era. Um, we have a business finance class that's gotten people interested in math that they wouldn't have been able to get interested in at a traditional high school. So the creativity is another way that makes Monterey a place that gets students re-engaged in their education. We were also recognized, if I can continue bragging, as a model continuation school in California. So we just received these ratings back to back a couple of weeks ago. This was another committee that came to us from the state, the California Department of Education, and it was very similar progress or process where they interviewed teachers in the community and the students, and we're now being recognized as a model school. And we'll be honored at a conference later in spring, and what I'm hoping is that we'll also be on the model school tour. So schools from around the state will be coming to this conference, and will hopefully be coming by Monterey High School to see what a model school looks like. Sort of a fun way for us to share practices and brag about the good things we're doing at Monterey High School. Next, we are just going to continue working. We're going to take whatever resources we have and continue to find alternative pathways to get students to graduate high school. It's a pretty amazing place. We have a more passionate group of staff than I've ever worked for in my 29 years as an educator, because they truly want to be working with students that need more help than a typical student. And it's an honor to be the principal.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to pause in just a second to take any questions about the Monterey program before we transition to the next program we want to highlight this evening. But before we do, I just want to share that an identified area for us to focus at Monterey School is really recruiting and getting students to transition into the school. I don't think there's a doubt in our minds that the quality of the program is there and the staff and the services that they provide. We just need to attract more students to this opportunity. So that is going to be an area of focus, as I think there is concerns with our budget and other factors across the district of making sure we're using FTE wisely. And that's a piece that we can continue to focus on, is making sure we have students enrolling into that program. And I don't know if you wanted to add to that. But other than that, also I wanted to include ILA as part of the sort of a partner school with Monterey, and part of the oversight that Dan provides on that campus. And so there's some discussion about blending those programs to make things attractive for students as well.
One thing I didn't add is that opt-in students are dual enrolled, which is something unique to Burbank. Not all districts allow this as an option, but we have several students who will be enrolled in 2 classes at Burbank High School and spend the bulk of their day back at Monterey in credit recovery. Other students come to Monterey to get caught up in credits so that they can go back to their home high school for their senior year, or even sometimes their last semester of senior year. Typically what happens though is once they get to Monterey, they realize that they really like it. And that's how good the school is. One other unique aspect that Burbank allows, and my former district didn't, is for students to walk in both ceremonies. So if they started at Burroughs as a student and then transitioned to Monterey, we allowed them to walk in both graduation ceremonies. It's a very unique celebration of the goals that those students have met. I'm really proud to be a part of that too.
So if anyone of our audience or participants have any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask those of Dan or I. I do see a question in the chat from previous slides about our middle school cohort data. And I wanted to clarify that it is not cohort tracking. It is looking at 6th graders from that year versus a different group of 6th graders in the most recent year. Well, appreciate you, Dan, for coming and sharing with us this afternoon or this evening, I should say, and look forward to good things at Monterey. So I'm next going to bring up Dr. Rebecca Harris, who's going to join me to share a little more information about our dual immersion program. So within our LCAP, we contribute funding for our dual immersion program through dual immersion teacher cost share. And I'm going to unpack that in a second. And then the other place where we contribute towards that program is through dual immersion instructional assistance. So first, the dual immersion teacher cost share. Our goal for dual immersion is for there to be a 50-50, a 50% English learner student population and a 50% English speaking population. What we've found is that we are traditionally or typically running approximately 60-40 in most cohorts. So we are funding 39% of the teacher salaries in that program through LCAP supplemental dollars. And to clarify to that a little further, we would have to dedicate funding for that FTE regardless. We have students in our schools. We have to dedicate a teacher to those students. The only difference here is the fact that it's a dual immersion program with a high density English learner demographic. We're able to fund 39% of that FTE through LCAP. So these dollars would be hitting our general fund. Regardless, it just allows us to transition some of this FTE to our LCAP. So there's not a lot of additional cost there. The other places are dual immersion instructional assistants, which are in our primary grade levels of the dual immersion program. They're not in grades 4 and 5. And so we do have typically para-educators in support of our English learners in primary grades. With our dual immersion program, the support with paras is a little more dense. So we have more paras for that program than we typically would for English learners throughout their schools. But we would have paras assigned to those students in either situation. So I think the question that's come of dual immersion is, well, how much extra is the district paying to run this program? When it comes to teacher salaries, it's not additional that we're paying, other than our class sizes do typically run lower in grades 4 and 5 than a non-dual immersion classroom. So there is a little added expense for the district to continue this program or to continue these cohorts in that those classrooms are not at the same rate of 34? Is that correct? 32 and a half. It's typically closer to just under 30 in some cases. The other piece is the additional cost of the para-educators, the instructional assistants in those primary grades, above and beyond what we would normally provide for that group of English learners. So I'm trying to create some context here, but Dr. Harris lives with the program. She breathes it. So I'll let her explain if there's anything more she wants to share about that.
Good evening. I am very proud of our dual immersion program. It's very close to my heart. So I would just like to share some highlights about it. First, I'll explain that at the elementary level, our dual immersion program is what's called a 90-10 model, which is what research tends to support when you're looking at the most effective types of dual immersion programs. What that means is that when our students start in the program at the kindergarten level, they're exposed to 90% Spanish in this case and 10% English. And what happens is that over the course of the years and the grade levels, the ratio of languages changes so that ultimately they're at a 50-50 rate. We have in all of our dual immersion classrooms, we have very dedicated teachers. It is very close to their hearts. They have gone through extra training to be qualified to be dual immersion teachers. It is not just that they happen to speak Spanish, is that they are truly trained to work in that type of program. And the same goes for their aides who are also very dedicated to the program. Some of the benefits, or I guess things that we're most proud of about the program, is that it truly prepares our students to live and thrive in this global society in which we live, not only with the language piece, but just recognizing that this world is becoming a much smaller place with people who speak multiple languages within one environment or one city. So along with that, it gives them a cultural competence and a comfort with interacting with a lot of different types of people and languages and cultures in their lives. And the biggest goal and objective of a 90-10 model or a dual immersion program is that our children come out truly being biliterate. And that's an important distinction to make, being bilingual versus biliterate. The goal of a dual immersion program is to come out being biliterate. So that means that the students not only speak both Spanish and English very well, but they are able to function at high academic levels ultimately in both languages. And so, of course, as I'm sure you can imagine, along with that comes critical thinking skills, the ability to handle high levels of rigor, and the ability to problem solve and adjust cognitively in different situations. And the last thing that I'll mention as a highlight is that, oh, I'm sorry, I'm slowing down. Oh, I usually don't get the slow down cue. Is that this is a program that really attracts families. It gives us another option to offer for families, another way to engage with a standards-based public education, but also with that highlight of coming out as a biliterate student or scholar in life. Sorry about that. Thank you.
So we're going to go back to a couple of slides. One is a snapshot from the same October 5th Seabeds Day of our typical enrollment at that time of year in all of these programs, which does stay pretty consistent through the whole year. And you can see the numbers in kinder, first, second, third, and so on. We typically now run 3 cohorts. Is that correct? So 2 cohorts at McKinley and 1 cohort at Disney. Or do I have that backwards? Which way?
Is that going through Disney?
Okay.
And one.
Sorry, I had that backwards. Yeah. 2 cohorts at Disney, 1 cohort at McKinley. And then those cohorts feed into Huerta Middle School for the middle school version of the dual immersion program, and then John Burroughs High School to complete. And we're excited because I believe this year we will be completing our first group of students, a cohort of students that have gone all the way through 12th grade with our dual immersion program. So some metrics that we can look at as far as measuring success within the program. These are our LCAP metrics that tease out specifically how we're doing and those grade levels when it comes to meeting proficiency on CASP assessments, as well as our English learner meeting and exceeding on the CASP assessment as well. But I think more specific is this information right here, and it's a little small on this slide. So I apologize, but if you can see from home, or you may want to check out the LCAP website to pull this up in full view. But the majority of this data is really comparing our dual immersion students versus our gen ed population and where our students are performing in that program. And across the board, in almost all cases, they are either outperforming or performing at the same level as our gen ed students. That's a tremendous accomplishment for those students, specifically in that our English learner students, which is a high density population in this program, are performing at that level, as they typically do not perform at that level on our state assessments. So kudos to the program and all of those students that are high achieving. Dr. Harris has shared a lot of the highlights. Here's some more general positive attributes of a dual immersion program, and I want to give her some opportunity for any closing thoughts.
So one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that when I say it's a 90-10 model and that the ratio of the languages changes over a period of time, that's done in a very methodical way. So what happens over the course of the grade levels at the elementary level is that that breakdown of the languages also has to do with what subjects they are getting in what languages at different times. So if you can imagine students learning all the academic language of math, for example, in both English and Spanish. This is something our dual immersion students are able to do over time. And then I see it here on the slide, but did not mention that ultimately this puts students in a place to earn the California State Seal of Biliteracy. It places them as potential candidates for that when they do get to the high school level. So that's one additional benefit.
Do we have any questions? This is an opportunity to unmute yourself and ask a question of Dr. Harris or I. Okay. So please reach out. Thank you, Dr. Harris, for joining me for tonight's LCAP. Please reach out if you do have questions. We'd be happy to respond to those. Our third and final program that we'd like to highlight tonight is the FSA school-based counseling. Before I do, I forgot I wanted to mention one thing about the dual immersion program. Just a reminder of why is dual immersion in our LCAP? It's in our LCAP because our LCAP is funded in part by our English learner population, and those funds have to be spent directly to increase and improve services for our English learners. So really all of our English learner program, ELD program, is funded through LCAP. And so dual immersion is an extension or basically an alternative version of that program that we think provides additional benefit to students. So that's why it's able to be funded through LCAP. Okay, so Burbank Family Services was the third program that wanted to share more information about. And so we contribute $131,000 towards a contract with Burbank Family Services to provide school-based counseling. The majority of that contract is actually paid for through the city of Burbank to provide for the Burbank Unified School District. So this is the additional expense to make sure the full contract is paid. And for clarity, it's on the slide, but this is a goal 2 action. So a couple metrics that we use to measure in goal 2 that this contributes towards is our chronic absenteeism rate, and tracking that to see improvements there. School attendance as well, hand in hand. And then survey data from students about from the school satisfaction survey about a positive learning environment at school. So those are a couple of the metrics that we measure and we believe the school-based program contributes towards. For tonight's meeting, I pulled additional metrics. These are very recent data that we've received from our mental health survey that we annually give in the fall. And so you can see baseline data and year 2 outcome data similar to our other LCAP metrics, looking at whether or not students are in need of counseling. And so this is more or less a sort of an assessment of need for our district. And so you can see the questions, the first one being, to what extent would some of your close friends benefit from different types of counseling or services? And then the second question is, to what extent would you yourself benefit from counseling or support services? So you can see the difference there from 23 to 25, and us hovering around 50% of the respondents saying there would be benefit in these areas. More specifically, metrics looking from 23 to 25 on various programs. So how would you rate the effectiveness of these school provided services or programs? The percentages you're seeing there are the students who responded as the percent very effective or extremely effective. So you can see specifically Burbank Family Service Agency of Burbank, school-based counseling, 31% increased by 2% to 33% of students rating that very effective or extremely effective. You can see group counseling, and then I want to highlight at the bottom their wellness center, specifically Burroughs and Burbank High, our two comprehensive high schools, and the percent of students who find that to be very effective or extremely effective. The second question there is the same question, but we're looking at a different percentage of respondents. This is the percentage of students who responded that they felt that the program or that program was not effective. And so you see the difference there from 23 to 25. That students that had that experience or rated it as such. A question that's probably going to be asked about this data is, well, how many students responded? With the mental health survey, it's not a requirement to respond to every question. So it does vary question to question the number of respondents. But in 2023, most questions had a high school student response of about 350. And then in 2025, the majority of these questions had a average of 200 students respond. So just kind of an idea of what the program is, what is school and what FSA does for us. So the portion of what the LCAP contributes towards the 131,000 is again school-based counseling, but sometimes there's confusion about all the different programs that they offer. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Knappich.
Yeah, go ahead. Before I begin, I want to thank Mr. DeMunda from Monterey High School for being here this evening and sharing, and also Dr. Harris, our Director of Elementary Education, for sharing, and of course, our moderator and LCAP lead, Dr. Robin Anders, who is our Director of Instructional Technology and Accountability. So you can see from the slide, there are 3 areas of counseling across the district. We have school-based counseling, wellness or care centers at our high schools, and then IEP counseling for our special education students. And here you can see this laid out on line 2, all students, high school students, and students qualifying as they have disabilities as identified through their IEPs. The access to school-based counseling, which is LCAP funded, is a referral or a request that comes from the school and families for services. The Wellness Care Center is a Medi-Cal funded, MA funded opportunity for counseling, and that comes through a voluntary drop-in process. And then for the special education IEP, that it would be the IEP team decision, including our families. The focus would be short-term support and counseling under school-based counseling. The wellness care centers, it's as needed and it's for prevention, it's stress release. It's also some intervention too. And it could lead to further additional counseling provided by FSA too. And then with IEP counseling, there's an educational goal. There could be a social emotional goal as a part of their IEP process. Just want to mention that school-based counseling, it is not required. Wellness care center is not required. These are offered by the school district. But for IEP special education counseling, those are required under IDEA.
Thank you, Dr. Knappich. I see a question or two in the chat, but also this is an opportunity to unmute to ask questions of either Dr. Knappich or I.
Yeah, hi, this is Britta Maslick. I had a question. How many students are served with this FSA counseling, school-based counseling? Because we've been trying to get that data, and it's difficult to find out the number of students that are being served and what kind of data is kept by FSA to share that with the public.
Okay. Britta, we can circle back with you, Dr. Knappich, and I do not have those numbers as part of tonight's presentation.
Yeah, I think it's just important when we look at spending $131,000, how many students actually are served by that? Because the IEP students, that's a totally, completely different funding source. So, it's difficult to have access to that data. So that is something that I really feel like we should have information on before we present this again to the board, because if we don't have information on how many students are being served, it's difficult to know if the program should be continued.
Agreed. Nuria, do you want to unmute to ask the question from our Spanish speaking participant? Or is it in the chat? Oh, she's in the room. She can't unmute. Do you mind putting it in the chat? I'm going to circle back to a couple other questions. Aren't the numbers served in the FSA quarterly reports? I got a head nod from Dr. Knappich. So we'll make sure that we get those shared out and potentially at a school board meeting. Do you have to have an IEP so my student qualifies for mental health? No, you do not. Dr. Knappich sort of outlined the different mechanisms for students to receive care. Just want to note that the wellness care centers for drop-in voluntary is only at our 2 high schools. So if this is a student outside of high school, they would need to work with a counselor for a referral to get school-based counseling, but does not require an IEP. Yep. Okay. Wasn't there an analysis done for similar services that the FSA provides, and it costs so much more? Yes. So a lot of the school-based counseling services we receive through FSA, we have not been able to find a comparable vendor that can provide that same service at the same cost. So many of the other, I'm just going to use an example of, I just lost the name of it. What was the provider we used for some IEP counseling? Sorry. When we ran a vendor that was working with us with IEP counseling to provide school-based counseling for all students, it was 3 to 4 times the cost of Burbank Family Services. We do also get a contribution from the city. So again, the 150 that is in LCAP is sort of a fourth, I believe, of the total contract. The city pays the other part. So thanks, JE. Another question is there discussion on dual immersion programs coming to BUSD? I've heard Glendale Unified has 14. I'm not exactly sure on the number at Glendale, but I know they do have a robust number of offerings with dual immersion. It's been challenging to staff and sustain a dual immersion program. So I do not believe we have any plans to expand beyond the Spanish program that's in existence, but I'm going to let Dr. Knappich speak to that.
This is an annual review that we look at to say, is this something we want to move forward with another dual language program? And so we look at our available facilities, we look at our budget, we look at resources like potential teachers coming to the district who are B-clad. And so we reflect on those kind of things as well as the need. Is it something that we might do in the future? You never know, but money is pretty tight right now, and It's to be seen. Okay. We just don't know at this point in time, but it's something we always look at and consider.
Okay, so the quarterly reports do not report number of students served. We'll look into that as far as what we can report to the board soon. Why do so many dual immersion students leave the program during elementary years? It's not necessarily that we're not able to retain. It's in fourth and fifth grade specifically, it's hard to add to the cohort. So if students haven't started initially, maybe for whatever reasons, we may have students leave, but it's hard to replace with a student that has that background of level of dual immersion or language support. When it comes to middle school and high school, it's really competing programs at those middle schools and high schools and elective choice. So in order to continue to participate at middle school, oftentimes students have to make a difficult choice to make Spanish their elective as opposed to other elective offerings. Or we do offer zero period and some alternatives for them to participate, but students may choose not to. High school, it's really about their Spanish coursework and getting to that final accomplishment of uh, what was the seal of biliteracy? Yes, yeah, an AP coursework. So it's just I guess students deciding they've gone as far as they want to go and down that path or road and take advantage of other electives or programs. Thanks, and I see Jen Goldenberg's responding in the chat. Thank you, Jen. There's model programs at Hart worth looking into, and I'm assuming that's in Britta, is that in reference to school-based counseling or dual immersion? If you want
Correct.
to
Yeah, they have different funding models, and I think it's definitely worth looking into.
for counseling.
School-based counseling,
Got it.
yes.
Thank you.
I think one of the issues that as if you talk to the staff at both high schools and middle schools, is that the FSA counseling, while it's a great theoretical model, is not working currently for all different reasons, as the district is aware and the school sites are aware. And so I think it is really important as we're looking at cutting funding in different areas to really make sure that the money that is being spent on services is providing the services that we want them to provide. And having worked at the school site for almost 20 years, I can tell you that FSA is not the best use of funding. Obviously, it's my opinion, but I think that's shared by staff at all secondary schools.
Okay. We'll keep Hart in mind. Question from our Spanish audience. Do we cover budget for special education? Not as part of LCAP. So you may want to stay tuned in to the board meeting where we'll be talking more about general fund and our other budgets. But I do believe there's also specific meetings for special ed and parent engagement that may be of interest. So if they want to reach out to Dr. Knappich or Jennifer Nicholson, Neria, we can stay on and make sure that that contact information is shared. I'm going to pause with questions because I see we've caught up, and I'm going to move ahead to two
Robin?
final slides. Yeah,
Robin,
unless there's more. Is there
sorry.
more discussion?
It's Jen Goldenberg.
Yeah.
Somebody posted that a third of students leave dual immersion in recent years. That's not accurate. If you look back at the slide,
Yep.
You can't read it going across because it's not the same cohort of kids. So if you look at in 2022-23, we had 40 students in second grade. That same cohort moved into third grade in 2023-24. That's 38 kids. That's two students. Difference is two students in second grade. Then in third grade, it went from 43 in third grade to 42 in fourth grade. It's a difference of one student. So I'm not quite sure where. And then from 2023-24, it had 38 kids in third grade and 40 in fourth grade. So we actually added a couple. And usually the students who are added after the midpoint of kindergarten are students who are enrolling from another dual immersion program in our state, or they're enrolling from a country where the language of instruction is in Spanish. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. I think somebody appreciated your response too in the chat. Okay. I'll revisit if there's any other discussion, but wanted to get to our last two slides for this evening, and that would be a slide that'll go to tomorrow night's school board meeting and is a update on our supplemental budget and district budget. You can see that from our original adopted budget overview or LCAP, we're now projecting a slight decline in our funding for this year. That's primarily, well, it's wholly contributed to a decline in enrollment since last year. But our percentages and numbers of unduplicated have stayed pretty consistent. The primary reason for this slide is the last item there of our Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. Late in the summer, the state determined that unspent funds from that block grant would be redistributed to schools and districts. So this was not something that districts were aware of when they created their LCAPs plans. So these are funds that will not be spent this year, but will need to be spent within the next 3 years. So that would be next year and the following. And we will be reporting an LCAP how those funds are anticipated to be spent. They will most likely be utilized to try to address our general budget concerns. And so this slide highlights that. So the funds received late, we do not have to amend or reproduce a LCAP for this current year. Instead, we will spread these funds out over the next 2 years in order to make use of them. As of now, do you anticipate the LCAP being stable going forward in future years? So our last our budget meeting in December indicated that we believe we will have approximately 500,000 in carryover, which is above 3%. So we're sort of mirroring what we do with general budget, is having some sort of reserve that is carried over. So next year, we anticipate that we'll be stable as well. It'll be a discussion next year for the following year if we feel like we need to make adjustments to the plan. So I feel like we're on solid ground, at least until the end of this, through year 3 of this LCAP. And then we'll adjust. And the adjustments will mostly be based off of enrollment and projected revenues. Will the board meeting, in what board meeting might the subject of SPED budget be covered? It'll be March 5th, second interim report. But I'm sort of guessing that teacher or that parent may have more specific programmatic questions, and those we could direct those to our special ed department. And I'm going to go ahead and put that email in the chat. Any other topics of discussion for tonight? We will be doing a mid-year update at tomorrow night's LCAP meeting. And there will be questions from our school board about our LCAP and the health of our budget and how we're progressing with our metrics. But we would love to see you there or tune in for that. Otherwise, we'll continue to keep you posted about our progress with the plan.
Yeah, I just had my hand up too. I
Oh,
just
sorry.
was,
Sorry.
that's okay. For the dual immersion, when there's a cohort of 40, does that mean 2 classrooms of 20, or how is that? What does that look like as far as classrooms?
Yes, it's usually 20. It's usually 2 classrooms of 20.
Okay, like, because we earlier, Robin, you had mentioned that for the dual immersion for the higher grades, it's closer to 30. So at the 4th and 5th grade, then we're looking at classes of 20 or 19 because they're not going to be classes of 38, right? Is that correct?
Yes, and I think he was also referring to like the percentage of the share of the cost of the teachers.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like, so there are 2 designated classrooms, a classroom that has 20 kids each at the 4th and 5th grade level, or 19 each at the 4th and 5th grade level for those years that we were looking at.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
For those years, correct. If we can move more students through the cohorts, the ideal is to be higher. But Dr. Knappich.
So partly the way that we're going to be addressing that too is we had started last year with 3 classrooms with 25, 26 in each room. This year we have 3 classrooms in kindergarten, 25, 26, so that by 4th grade, 5th grade, we're having more students in those classrooms. So there's 25, 28 with the hope of 30, but there's no guarantee because students do leave the district.
Right. I think because I know a concern that I know I've heard from parents is that there's an equity issue, right? I feel like a student that's being taught in 4th grade in a class of 20, right, is going to get much more attention with 2 adults than in a classroom of 32 with only 1 adult. So I think a parent earlier asked like the amount of money that's spent per classroom. I think that's something that probably might be helpful to look at to see.
It's something
Britta?
we're well aware of. Yeah.
Britta,
Yeah.
it's not 2 adults in a class of 20 when it hits 4th and 5th grade. There is no para-educator.
Okay. So yeah. So 20 with only one
Yes,
person.
and
Yeah.
remember they're learning, they have to master the ELA standards and the Spanish language arts standards. So it's still a really heavy lift for our kids.
Right. But I'm just talking about the 20-to-1 ratio versus the 32-to-1 ratio. So
True. Think about it in terms of high school. How many kids are in the ELD classes versus in the other classes, the English classes?
And I think it's fair that that's adding accuracy to what I was saying earlier, that there is added cost, but that it's not that we're paying an entire teacher's salary for that program. We would be funding an FTE for students regardless. But yes, there is an additional cost in that the class size is smaller than your typical class, and the accuracy in that is the last couple of years it's been 20 instead of 32.
right. So that's just something to think about when we're looking at.
We definitely think about it. And then also when families enroll in the dual immersion program, we have a understood promise that they're going to continue through 5th grade. The majority do. Of course, we're going to have some dropouts. It's unfortunate. Like I said, people do leave the district and for whatever reason, but it is something we're well aware of. And that's why to mitigate that, approaching it in a different way by adding students up front so that by the 4th and 5th grade, we have more students in those classrooms. That also is going to roll into the middle school and into high school too. And we want to give students as many opportunities as we can. So it really is a benefit to the students and their families and their futures.
Right. No argument there. I'm just looking in the world of budget cuts, right? When we look
Totally.
at different cuts, where do we cut? Just like the Monterey program is an exemplary program, but how can we look at our budget and budget differently. So just some food for thought.
Totally. And I think point well taken in that we continue to recruit to make sure we're filling programs to capacity so that the staff's being utilized fully, for sure.
Robin, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but Nuria has posted a couple times in the chat a question about
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Was returning down. Maybe I'm missing it. The last one I saw was about the special ed budget.
Which board meeting covers a special ed
March
budget? Was
5th.
it was March 5th. Okay.
Yes. Sorry, March 5th. Our numbers are trending down for the district. I have a second grader that has 23 students in the class. Yeah, and 24 is our max. Yes, and kind of a unique phenomenon the last year or two is losing some students during the school year. Typically, that's just a summer phenomenon, but we were seeing large increases of immigrant students for a while, and now we're seeing the opposite of some of the students leaving us mid-year. Okay. Looks like I think we're at a good point for tonight's meeting. Please reach out if there's questions in the interim. And you have Dr. Knappich, Dr. Harris, myself, Mr. DeMundo as resources that we can respond. Appreciate everyone and stay tuned for tomorrow night's board meeting when we give our mid-year update to them. Thank you, everyone.